How are we doing, everyone? I'm Victoria Wiltshire, and this is Songtradr Happy Hour. To our audience, feel free to use the chat windows throughout the session. As usual, the last 20 minutes will be our interactive Q&A portion. We will try to get through as many questions as we can, so don't forget to enter them in the Q&A window on Zoom or via chat on Facebook. Now we've got that out of the way, let's get on to the bit that you've all joined to see. A quick intro of our panelists, and then I'll get them to fill in all the gaps for us. Our first guest has led the charge for all Activision's in-game music initiatives since 2003. He was the original lead on the Tony Hawk franchises, the guy who became a household name by doing impossible stunts on a sliver of maple plywood and 4 tiny wheels while making it look easy. Speaking of franchises, our guest has executed the scores behind the all-time biggest selling Call of Duty, which has consecutively broken its own records as the most successful entertainment launch in history. Well done. Just about everyone has heard the name Guitar Hero, for which he oversaw the music selection and in-game celebrity talent integrations, working with names like Metallica, Aerosmith, Van Halen, and Taylor Swift. As a connector, he has brought in such legendary film composers as Hans Zimmer, Sarah Schachner, I always have trouble with that one, Jack Wall, and Harry Gregson-Williams. He is the Senior Director of Music Affairs for Activision. I am very pleased to welcome Brandon Young.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to have you. Our next guest has the kind of job title that would make most kids say, I want that job. Over the last 8 years, as head of gaming for electronic music record label Monster Cat, he's responsible for connecting music and gaming communities through strategic partnerships and campaigns. If you've played Rocket League, Beat Saber, my kid does, or a multitude of other games, you've probably spent many of those lost in time moments also listening to the music of Monster Cat. A very warm virtual welcome to you, Gavin Johnson.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Very pleased to have you both. Thank you so much for being with us here today. So our topic is music for gaming, what's working plus what's ahead. So I think we'll get straight into it. Brandon, I'm going to throw to you right away. What would you say are some of the jobs that music needs to fulfill when soundtracking a game?
Well, I think there's a few different sort of things that we think about, right? For one, you have your actual game. So let's take Call of Duty, for instance. You have Call of Duty. That's going to require a massive score, call it 150 to 180 minutes worth of music that you're going to need. So what we typically do, just focusing on the game part, is taking a step back from the very beginning of the process of the project. I'll sit down with the development studio to determine sort of what their overall goal is for the sort of the narrative of the game. You know, sometimes we have a modern day version, or a World War II era version, or maybe you're sort of Vietnam, whatever the case, you've got your different eras. So we first want to identify what kind of sound we want. And that's when I come in and list out, call it a short list, but it's typically a longer short list of potential composers that we can start sort of narrowing down, right? You know, we'll start listening to their reels, trying to identify if they're the right sound for us. I'll usually touch base with their reps or agent and kind of just check and see if their schedule permits. Sometimes you'll find that someone has too much time on their plate. Usually if I'm calling about Call of Duty, I think most people will find the time to do it. But that's that side of it. So there's a few other aspects that go on from our company. A ton of marketing material. So I work with all of our ad agencies. I work on all the trailers. That means deciding what the big hit song is going to look like for whatever asset that is, or it could be a library track, or it could be something in between. We do a lot less custom. I saw that as sort of one of the comments in the notes we were sharing back and forth, but it's usually kind of set up between those 3 buckets: library, massive artist, composer for score. That's kind of how I think about it in general.
Sounds like you've answered all of my talking points first up.
We can dive into it further. I didn't mean to do it that way. I just wanted to sort of give the overall scope.
And so when you do your search, how wide is the search? Perhaps it's reliant on budget, perhaps it's reliant on time, but how deep do you dig?
Yeah, there is that. You know, sometimes sometimes I'll have just met someone recently and they make the mix just by way of timing, right? Oftentimes what I do is, after doing this as long as I've been doing it, I just reach out to all the agents that I'm very familiar with, in addition to some of the composers that I'm just friendly with, and I start asking them to do custom little sampling, score samples of whatever clips we send them. So really, it's helpful when I'm dealing with the agents because they can already go ahead and tell me who's around, who's busy, who's available, when I describe what I'm looking for, they're obviously very familiar with their stable of talent, so they're very helpful in helping me identify who might fit the style that I'm trying to achieve.
How about you, Gavin? I'm sorry, did you finish?
Well, I was just going to say, so at the end of the day, I typically start out with a list of, call it 10 to 15 composers that we then shortlist down to call it a final 2, 3, or 4 that we then have demo. And then, sometimes it's a really tough decision and you just have to sort of make one at the end of the day.
How does that sound for you, Gavin? Is it a very similar process at Monstercat for you?
Yeah, I mean, like our process is we're trying to really build an ecosystem where we're placing music that can drive memorable and magical moments in game, so that these magical moments and memorable moments are bringing additional life to the game beyond the gameplay, so that through those moments you're creating a new identity for the song, which results in longevity for both the game and for the song as well, which then creates this cross-pollination of communities between both the game itself and then also for the artists and their communities as well. And then for Monstercat, we're also a brand forward record label, so that we're creating partnerships, Monstercat partnerships within the games, so that it's also an ecosystem of the fans from Monstercat who are also with the artists are cross-pollinating within the game and becoming fans of the game. And the fans of the game are becoming fans of the artists and discovering the artists in the game as well. And to really create that perfect ecosystem, these songs need to be lightweight from a rights perspective. The rights need to be, from the master and the publishing side, they need to be easily clearable, usually one stop. Lyrics as well need to have like a specific message as well. So we're trying to create specific tones or messages within the music. They need to be usually like clean, friendly, so that with games like Rocket League, it's rated E, so we can't risk the rating. Also have it be creator safe music, so that it's at least no DMCA takedowns or safe for Content ID, or even some sort of program that allows for both the artist to benefit and the game as well. And also what really creates a great partnership with the music and the game is through the buy-in through both the label, the artist, their communities, and the developer and the publisher, so that everybody is invested in being involved in this game and helping drive that message and that magical moment. And then of course behind the scenes, it's the teams on both ends that are executing this project. So with Rocket League, we've been a partner with them for 3 years, and it's us, both Psyonix and Monstercat, driving a vision for discoverability and making that game a real pillar for music discovery as well. So and also a middle ground between like a transactional and a partnership as well for these campaigns and syncs.
Yeah, I love it. So you're creating all of these other levels within the different segments, within the different collaborations, so
Right.
that it becomes this holistic experience, I guess.
Right.
So you talked about connecting is some of the common connectors, I think, already. Do you find that to be the same, Brandon, that when you're looking at the types of music that really works for gaming? And I know it varies because you've got so many different types of games which require different types of music. But are there commonalities that you see?
Well, I'll give you just a recent example. We just announced that we are remastering our Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 titles that came out back in 1999 and 2000, I believe, respectively. So that was back in like the peak days of the PS1 console. So 20 years ago, we basically taken that, remastered it, and given it a whole new current gen look and feel. So what we did was, back then in 99 and 2000, it was just a different landscape of music and games. It was the Pro Skater 1 had maybe 12 to 15 songs in it, and the second one had about 20. So we went back and relicensed almost all of the original soundtrack. There were a couple of defunct labels where we just weren't able to actually track down those rights. But then in addition, we wanted to modernize it too, right? So we went through and, plugged in another 40-ish number of songs. That's just a nice mix of current skate culture type of music, right? So when you're thinking of that brand, you really want to tie it into the skate culture, which is typically, we've always sort of viewed it as sort of your hip hop, your indie punk rock, and well, those three bucketed: hip hop, punk, and rock. So that's just an example on that brand, and that's a fun one to do, right? Because you get to sort of have fun with it. You get to work with a lot more up and coming artists on a title like that. Whereas, a lot of the other things we do, the artist might have to fit the size of the brand. When we used to do all of our Call of Duty trailers, for instance, we were always thinking on the biggest of biggest levels, which, funny enough, that pool starts to get really small when you really start digging into it. Some examples of artists that we used over the years for some of those trailers would be like Eminem, Metallica, Rolling Stones, AC/DC. It's like the top of the top, that sort of makes that fit. So it's fun when you can go on the Tony Hawk side and actually have fun with it, and really work with some cool artists that you really believe in and want to see succeed.
Yeah, I bet. It sounds very fun, but of course there's a lot of hard work that goes on behind it. So let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah, there's always work involved.
Yeah.
Totally.
Oh gosh, darn it. So that's a really nice segue actually into this next bit, because I think both of you would have to be somewhat entrenched in the communities that you're serving. But how entrenched do you think you'd have to be? So for instance, Gavin, how much do you immerse yourself in the gaming community or the music community, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, we're incredibly deep. Monstercat, it began as it's the username of Monstercat was a username for gaming. Monstercat originally was a bunch of people, like-minded people who were gamers, and it was just a Skype group, and the artists are gamers, and it's what created this like core affinity to gaming that Monstercat has. So we're extremely active on Reddit, on various social platforms. We have one of the largest music Discords as well. On that Discord, we're connecting all of our partners in there. So on Rocket League, we're connected with their announcements so that when we're announcing new music in the game, the music's also being blasted to all the Rocket League Discord community members, which is like 400,000 something people. We're doing gaming nights. We're having our artists become champions for their RLCS and their esports productions. And it's everybody, it's all buy-in throughout both the staff, the communities, and everybody involved. So we're very ingrained when it comes to the whole gaming side.
Right, and for the interview process, do people have to show their gaming skills before they get a job at Monstercat?
Not required, but yeah, it's a bonus.
Yeah, I bet. And how about you, Brandon? Like I think you're quite connected to the music industry, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of the role I play within the company. I'd say from a company perspective, of course, we're very ingrained into what we do. We have entire departments dedicated to keeping up with, boots on the ground, what's going on in the communities. Me personally, gotta be honest, I don't game a lot. So it's funny enough, I've been working in this industry nearly 20 years, and I'm just kind of a so-so player. I think it just kind of came with my background. I feel like my skill set is trying to find the right pieces of music for what we're trying to achieve, and that's the role I play. Funny enough, though, I do feel like I really tap into and utilize people from the different groups I'm working with. Gavin just mentioned working on the esports side. We have two esports leagues, Activision owned. One's the Overwatch League and the other one's the Call of Duty League, and they're actually franchised leagues similar to, call it the NFL, right? It's like you have your league, and then you're actually, for instance, we even have Robert Kraft, who owns the New England Patriots, who owns one of our Overwatch teams and Call of Duty teams. We have DJ Tiesto, Marshawn Lynch, who's a football player. Steve Aoki's a part owner. All these teams actually have celebrity ownership. But back to my point, is that I tap into the individual groups. So the crew that works under the marketing teams on our esports leagues know exactly what their fans are into, and they're very helpful in steering me down the right path that I need to be on. And then I can take myself down that path and dig a little deeper. But I like to utilize I like to get extract as much information as I can out of the people on my team before I sort of take my next steps, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense. So if we're talking about music acquisition in general, and I don't know how much you could talk about this, but I'm just curious to know, across the board, are the approaches for music acquisition quite similar, or do you think that at Activision you do something that's different?
I would have to think that there's probably a lot of similarities in what us and the other companies are doing. Of course, once you sort of outline your terms and needed rights, then it's just a matter of negotiating that kind of stuff throughout whichever record label or publisher you're dealing with at that moment. I don't know. Of course, there's always complications in any negotiations and in any sort of redlining of agreements. And, sometimes language pops up that just makes things, difficult. And there's certain things that have popped up year after year over the years that, doesn't make things easy, from, just figuring out how to deal with musicians unions and things to that aspect, to, things that we might not have full control of that are being written out in agreements. I'd say those are the red flags that I've always, those stumbling blocks I'm still trying to get over at this point.
Yeah, I bet probably a lot of people are. So if you have any magic answers, just feel free.
Wish I did. There's one more thing that I'm looking for a magic answer for, and I just like to share it with this group because it's a good forum for it. We oftentimes hire influencers, right, to promote our game through their channels where they have their thousands or millions or however many followers, right? So especially like in these gaming communities, you'll have these huge gamers. So Tony Hawk's a great example. We want to be able to package up some of our gameplay for these influencers to be able to then cut their own little videos, post it on their channels, and give us a bunch of views, right? So we can get that sort of promotional look out of it. But we can't give it to them with the music that's in there, because it'll get auto flagged on their channels, and then they'll get dinged, and then it turns into a big hotbed mess that we have not been able to figure out a workaround to date. Funny enough, I've had my friends and colleagues at other gaming studios, Sony and EA and Microsoft, and they've all called me asking if I've figured out a solution to get around this issue, and so far no one has. And it's one of those things that, like, it is as obvious as it is something that would make sense for us to want to and be able to do. There's no clean way to pass through those rights to have an influencer be able to use the copyrighted music in that manner. So it's more or less unfortunate at this stage, and I hope we do get to a point where someone can figure out a workaround. But right now, that's just one more call it issue that I would love to solve.
Yeah, and one of my questions was, what does the industry utopia look like? And probably without that, I would say.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. How about you, Gavin? What kind of issues do you come across? Those kind of issues as well?
I mean, I would love to touch on the subject of, like, what is the ultimate solution for that. Just because at Monster Cat, we have over a couple thousand records on the label that ranges from Marshmello, like Alone and his platinum record, and other artists as well. We have a huge diverse catalog of various genres through EDM, and with that rich catalog that we have, we do have various solutions for problems like that. The majority of the catalog we have both the master and the publishing rights for. We have our own YouTube CMS. We also have our own program called Monster Cat Gold, which is a subscription service for licensing music to content creators for a very small fee, which is $5 a month. We also have our own partner program that has thousands of content creators, the largest content creators in the world that we've built with over the years, and the everyday creator, to where they are able to use that music in their videos for gameplay if the song is in a video game or not. Like, for example, Marshmello Alone, that record is under our gold program. So like a creator can go and pay $5 to be able to use Marshmello Alone in their video. And that comes with the game partners that are with us too. So if that song is under the gold program, or the song is content ID free for any reason, which we also facilitate as well, we don't DMCA take down any music for content creators either. So for Rocket League, for example, those songs are free for creators to use in their videos, so that it's as if the track was owned and composed internally, so that it is frictionless and there is that ecosystem for your creativity. And with Monster Cat Gold, where there is a fee on there, it creates this ecosystem for where this like open economy, to where both the artist and the game are both monetizing from that too. So that's what we're doing from the ground up to solve problems like that. And we're starting to see the industry, the music industry at large, also kind of adopting practices like that.
Yeah, that's a great solution. And how about the pollination of music in other territories as well? So I was just interested to know, do you have any roadblocks when perhaps getting music or games into India or China, for instance, or does that just not happen?
For myself?
It can be fed either of you.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we don't really have those roadblocks in terms of our catalog. We have the global rights for the music, so I can't think of on the top of my head any roadblocks we have specifically. No.
Yeah.
Global rights is our typical standard ask, of course. Some of the issues I've run into in the past have been with some of the foreign PR public performance societies, like your GEMA in Germany and your SACEM in France, and they have different sort of copyright laws over there where they expect a mechanical royalty if a song that is one of their side writers is included on a disc. So we ship a game disc, they're expecting a mechanical royalty. So part of our workaround for years is to just avoid artists that are on those two societies, but I'm trying to get past that right now, and I'm actually trying to work with the German artists and just buy out the mechanical rights in advance. We'll see if that solves our problem with them and move on. That's it for now.
Yeah, well, the other solution is to just create one big happy world.
Yeah, right? Yeah,
a dream.
That's my notes.
Yeah. So can we talk about trends now? I think people would like to know what are some notable trends perhaps that you're seeing either in the gaming world or in the music world? Brandon, do you want to take a stab at that one?
Sure. I mean, I think the biggest sort of shift I've seen over the past 2 years from my point of view and from where I sit is this esports side of the spectrum, because there's a lot of additional complexities that are outside the norm of the things that we've been used to doing, which is scoring music for a game, putting music in trailers, licensing music for a game, whatever it is, pretty sort of within the box, right? And then you throw in a league that now has franchise-owned teams that's getting broadcast globally on multiple TV stations around the world, right? We have in the US for Overwatch League, it's broadcast on Twitch for digital, ABC, ESPN and Disney XD, and then there's like, you know, 3 TV stations in China, TV in South Korea. There's TV networks all over the world that pick this up. So that all of a sudden complicates like everything that you do. Now you have to be managing global performance rights for all these different territories. It's just a very complex world that we're just getting a peek behind the curtain at and trying to figure out how to navigate as we go. So, you know, as far as trends go, I wouldn't say I'm seeing many others from our sort of normal day to day, right? We'll if we work on another Call of Duty, we'll sort of, you know, continue down the same sort of model path that we've been doing. We do have a mobile studio, King Mobile, that's based in London, who did, you know, Candy Crush and Farmville, and they're working on a slew of other mobile products that'll be coming out. And they're trying to really advance development and how music is used versus your sort of, you know, typical what you think of a music on an app. Feels more 8-bit, if you will. So they're really trying to take some leaps, and we'll see where that goes. I'll be interested. It'll be interesting to see if we're able to pull off some of the things that they aspire to do.
I love that you mentioned 8-bit, because that was one of my questions that I wanted to just take us through that journey of going back to 1972. I don't know if we all remember the game Pong by Atari, where you basically, you've got these 2 white lines and you're just hitting this little bleep on the screen, and the sound in that is quite basic, right? It's just buzzes and beeps basically. And then you fast forward to now, and anything is possible. We've got full soundtracks, we've got commercial artists, like Gavin mentioned, Marshmello with Happier. These things are massive, so the scope has widened incredibly. So that leads me to the categories of music that we've been talking about a little bit. We have independent music, we have library, we have custom composition, commercial artists. Do we see any of the above being licensed more than the others? Gavin, perhaps you want to start there?
It's an interesting question, and kind of also goes and it combines with the trends as well, to where we're starting to see that compared to games of the past, where it's a game where you develop it, you put it on CD, and you ship it, and there's no update process in there, to where the game is the soundtrack that's in there is the soundtrack that it's going to be, and there's no update. But where you're starting to see games go now is they're always live, always online. They're going to keep updating over time, to where now you're able to create this environment where the music can be updated at any given time. So instead of having, even like a few years ago, where you're maybe working with 6 months to a year patch cycles, games today are now working at 2-week to a week patch cycles. So we're trying to create this environment where could be custom comps, it could be commercial, could be library, independently owned music, can be the rights are so lightweight and agile, to where they can go into the game tomorrow if it is needed. So if there's a specific theme that's needed for a content patch, it's a summer theme or it's an esports theme or something, we're able to provide or like those tracks are able to be synced right away. So that we can kind of fulfill the need for games of today that have increased IP collaborations and sort of this metaverse concept and stuff like that. So licensed music, I think, kind of is taking the cake right now. But custom comps and stuff are stuff that, of course, are going to be needed over time.
Did you say metaverse? That sounds like superhero stuff.
Metaverse, yeah, it's just this concept of an ever-changing world, which a lot of games today are going, that are always online and always updating.
Yeah, right. The instant sync, that's music to our ears, right? Brandon, anything to add?
Yeah, sure. Gavin makes an interesting point, and you know, we have our online free-to-play Call of Duty Warzone that came out just a few months ago. That's it's been a big hit. But there's a lot of things that we're trying right now within that within that space. I don't want to go into the details because none of it's announced, and we're still sort of putting that stuff together. But
Go on, do it.
very valid point that does open up the opportunity to do things a lot different than you did in the past. To be able to plug something into a world, for a specific period of time and then pull it back out while that world continues to exist. So yeah, it's a lot different than the days of shipping disks. But back to your initial part of that point on Pong and 8-bit and the earlier days. It's just to think about it and thinking back on all on the Mario theme, which you can just instantly think about and pop it in your head, and what companies like Nintendo were able to do with that type of sound and create music that has outlasted a lot of major internationally known pop acts or whatever. It's incredible to sort of see what they were capable of doing. Sometimes I think the stripped down ease of not ease, but just the ability for it to just be that stripped down just almost made it that much cooler and that much less difficult to try and figure out what the right thing to do is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was pretty excited when I first heard Mario Kart. So, I mean, that just goes to show how old I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, don't agree that quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So for the music creators out there, what are some tips that you could pass on to them? What are some common mistakes that you might see? I don't know who wants to take this one. Gavin, Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, I can give it a shot.
Sure.
Some common mistakes could be on the top of my head, like lyrics are a big one. So many tracks get turned down because of the lyrics, and also if you don't hold just as a music creator, like if you don't have your project file or you don't have your pre-master or like you're not able to edit the track in any way to where it sounds not jarring, then like that can be an issue. If you're really trying to create music that is specifically geared towards gaming, have it be your signature sound, have it really hit the nail on the head for the genre or the theme that is asked of you or that you're going for. Also, tracks that are short and sweet or 3 to 4 minutes long, nothing really larger than that, kind of stay within that sweet spot, because for mobile games and especially rhythm games that require movement or you could be fatigued by any way in a long period of time, rhythm games tend to turn down music that is longer, unless that could also be edited too. Don't for today's day and age, try to be a bit more independent with the production as well. Don't include too many writers, too many vocalists, unless it's someone that it could be easily clearable. Just be conscious of the rights that are going to go into that when you try to clear it for a developer and a publisher, if there might not be enough timeline or space between the clearance of that record to get a bit technical. But on the top of my head, those are some key things that go into maybe some roadblocks that we've had in the past, or what we've heard problems that people have with certain specific records.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that we don't want to take away from the magic of the collaboration. Obviously,
right.
If songwriters are really hitting it with others, then perhaps just go with that, right? But
right.
Just to emphasize your point, Gavin, is something that we always say: whatever platform you're using to upload your music ready for licensing, make sure you have all the versions there. Get them all prepared at the point of production. Get your instrumentals, no effects, the lyrics,
right.
have it all ready to go, because that opportunity can come by and leave very quickly. So
yeah, you won't believe some tracks that are 5-6 years old, like they're perfect matches, but there's this one hang up with it and the artist lost the project file and all that stuff. Like you won't believe it. It happens all the time. So definitely just be conscious of that stuff.
Yeah, be organized. And to you, Brandon, you wanted to add something, didn't you?
Yeah, I was just going to say, sure, everything Gavin said, I completely agree with as well. good points. I feel like for me, I do a lot less sort of, I don't know, cattle call type briefs. But when I do, I feel like I'm going to, really find what I want. I don't do it because I don't have a lot of opportunities to for those types of needs. And I think that makes it a little more difficult for me. I think part of the problem when, back to the origin of the question, which was around how, what creators might do wrong when they're trying to get music in someone's hand. For me, I feel like my inbox just fills up with just things that are just kind of cold, cold call shot to me. Like I don't have any idea where they came from. So I don't listen to them, and 98% of them, I just don't have time to listen to. And I think that's unfortunate for the creator, because I'm sure they put a lot of hard work into whatever they sent. Hell, they took the time to find out who I am and find out where, how to get it to me. I think sometimes with things like that, it's just the luck of timing, and trying to find people that do have briefs out, that are looking for something specific that you can try and tackle, and meet those needs. I think it's just I'll just call it what it is. It's a bit unfortunate that I don't listen to a lot of the stuff that comes my way.
So on that, what are some good ways then for music creators to get music into the hands that can potentially do something with them? I know it's a really tough question, because everyone wants the opportunities, don't they? And there are so many people competing for the same opportunities. It really is a tough thing. But so for you, Brandon, you're saying don't just hit you up in your inbox, because that probably you just don't have the time to get to it.
That's what it is. Yeah, that's what it is. I think, if the question is what should people do to help them figure out the right paths? I mean, some advice I've given in the past is, there's some decent companies out there that rep small artists or indie artists, or, and they typically have good direct relationships with people, the music decision makers across all different types of media, whether it's video games or TV or film or what have you. And sometimes if you can get in with someone like that, you're going to have a better shot at least getting your sound into the right hands of, the people that do make those decisions. I think it's all sort of individual for what people are looking for and doing, on our side of the fence or whatever. Because, if you think of like you watch a TV show and you see opportunities all day, right? For things that, as if you're a content creator, you probably watch some network show in the evening and be like, I could have easily done that. My sound would be perfect for that. I could have killed what they already did. And it's just about being able to have that door opened at the end of the day. So I don't know. There's not a single easy answer to fix that question. I think you just gotta sort of keep pushing at it, keep driving, and just try and figure it out.
Right. So Gavin, just on the other side of it, how far does Monstercat go if let's say that you're trying to unearth a fresh new sound? What kinds of places would you go to look?
For like the acquisition of music on Monstercat, or?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So we utilize a service called Label Radar for our demo submissions. It's a very intuitive platform that allows you to sort the artist, the sound, genre, easily download and listen to the music. It's an incredible platform for sorting and going through music instead of just getting a bunch of emails in your inbox and all of that. Like, you can include a pitch, and you could also create like certain campaigns and things like that. But we have also an incredible roster of artists that are incredibly diverse, and also they are more than willing to help us with our gaming endeavors and other projects, not even gaming, for custom compositions and things like that. So we utilize all tech and relationships with our artists to sort of achieve that.
Yeah, I can see everyone rushing to Label Radar now, getting
Yeah.
the music out. That's a good tip. So I can't believe we're here now. We're already at Q&A time. So let's go to our Q&A little panel here. From someone who's anonymous, they're saying, what exactly do you look for when you're searching through the music during selection process? We covered some of these things, but is there anything new that you'd like to add to this, either Gavin or Brandon?
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Gavin. I'll just be real quick on this one. From where I said, it's like, you know, if we're looking for something for a trailer, we know sort of exactly what we're trying to, not exactly, that's a horrible way to put it, but we really have an idea of what we're trying to achieve. How we look for it from that point, it just depends, right? Sometimes I'll send out briefs to labels. Sometimes I'll just do some deep digging, or maybe I've just stumbled across something on my own that I thought was might be a really good fit. You know, Activision being a large corporation, a lot more when we're trying to plug a song into a major launch or reveal type trailer. There's so many decision makers in the process that sometimes we, you know, get in our own way and trip over our own feet just trying to get to that decision point. So it's hard to say. I think every project has its own sort of obstacles, if you will.
Yeah. How about Kevin?
Yeah, I was going to say the same exact thing. It's totally dependent on what the needs are for both the label, the game, the A&R. It's totally case by case on what the inbound is. So. Great.
So let's go over to our Facebook questions now. Ayana Chu. This is a question for Brandon. Do you guys ever use more than one composer or just one primary one? I'm not sure if that is for one job or...
So for one project, we typically use one composer. That composer, oftentimes what we do is set an additional sort of bucket of funds aside for that composer to be able to bring in, call it soloist. You might want something that's specifically good at certain things, and we'll you know, bring in that additional talent to support what his vision is. But yeah, it's typically one per project. The only time we've had hired additional beyond that is when we were just under a massive crunch time and it didn't feel like he was going to be able to hit the deadlines, and we just split up the levels and said, okay, well, you take the rest of this, and we'll bring in, you know, composer B to fill in these other scenes that you're not going to get to.
Yeah, has that happened to you as well, Gavin? Were you on a time crunch and you've had to kind of split efforts?
Yeah, it's dependent on the project. If someone needs one composer, we can work with that. Or if we have a bit more lead time and budget, we can bring in multiple artists to do a collective group of custom comps. So it's project by project for that.
Yeah, it's the same for anything, isn't it? It's all about the amount of resources you have, whatever they may be. So back to our Zoom Q&A from Pranav Godnakia. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Pranav. How to verify or validate my own skill for making music to game to know that my music is ready for gaming audio? It's an interesting question. Gavin, any thoughts on this one?
It's a tough one. Honestly, I'm not our A&R, so that they would know that way better than me. But it's honestly just reach out to some labels. If there's any labels or any services that are targeting those games or projects that you're wanting to target, just reach out. And I know on the Monskit side, we do provide feedback for demos, for selected demos that come in on a case-by-case basis. But reach out to other artists. Maybe if there's a lot of forums, discords out there, music discords, artist communities where an artist maybe that has been placed in the game before or released on a label can be helpful to you. Just get creative and just try to find those mentors and those champions for you to I guess find that validation.
Yeah, I learned about Discord through my kids, and the first time I saw one of those conversations going on, I almost threw up. It's like a million words a minute. They just move at a different pace to us. Anyway, to you, Brandon, anything to add on that one?
Yeah, I just lost my train of thought. I literally had something I was going to say,
I'm so
and I
sorry.
forgot, so sorry.
Well, so no, that's fine. And perhaps one thing I was going to add, that maybe on the production side for Pranav, about assessing whether or not your music is ready for gaming audio. You could potentially do some A/B testing once you've produced a track up, and have a listen to what's actually being used already in the games and see how it actually compares. Perhaps even play the game without the audio on and play your track. You know, that would be an interesting thing to do.
I think the one thing that I would add just on top of that, and I don't know if this person with the question was talking about scoring a game as a composer, or whether it was someone who released a track as an artist of some sort. I think you'll know when you're ready to be a composer after being able to get a few small projects under your belt. For us, as on the caliber of titles that we put out, we're not going to take a chance with a sort of up and coming composer without having proven their reel, their resume at that point. But I think both of your comments were spot on. I think they're, if it's a song that they're curious of what other people think about the production value, send it to someone like Monster Cat, like Gavin just mentioned, or just try and get as many sort of professional opinions as you can, and go from there and keep working at it.
Yeah, good advice. Right, so, and Stephen K is asking how to submit our songs to Monster Cat. Gavin?
Yeah, that would be through Label Radar. So I think you can just search it on the site, or you can go to our website, and there's a submissions box for music.
Okay, good to know. Get ready for an influx.
All good.
So let's go back to Facebook. Yinka I. Oh my gosh, I'm just having so much trouble with names today. How does a hip hop artist get on the radar to get a placement for a game like Tony Hawk Pro Skater? So we may.
Sorry, I started reading comments for a second. What was the first part of that question? I know it's about getting it on Tony Hawk, but start the beginning of it.
How does a hip hop artist get on the radar to get a placement?
Tony Hawk's a tough one. I mean, we haven't put that game out in a long time, and this is a remaster of what we put out 20 years ago. So for what it's worth, that soundtrack is now locked. So we would have had to go back in time at this point in order for that to be a real possibility. At the end of the day, I was just dealing with all of my 20 plus years of industry contacts, and really deep dive filtering through what I felt like was going to be the right sound. Tony Hawk himself had some suggestions on songs he wanted to try and slot in. That one's a little bit muddy. I would say get that hip hop song out on a label, and work on development as an artist so that it does make the radar, things like that.
Gavin, anything to add there?
Not really. We don't. We're EDM. We do have some hip hop here and there, but it's definitely not our. It's not Monster Cat.
Fair enough. I thought I'd just give you some airtime.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I wish I could know how to get every song in Tony Hawk.
Yeah, well, I might know someone. Nicole Sanzio. Gavin mentioned songs length is typically 3 to 4 minutes, but to both Brandon and Gavin, are you normally looking for full songs with lyrics or instrumentals too? And if instrumentals typical length, is it still 3 to 4 minutes? Either of you can take.
I think you're gonna get a similar answer from both of us, which is project by project. When you're looking at Tony Hawk, 3 to 4 minutes is an average song length. When you start getting to something longer than that, it just gets too monotonous. When we're actually putting songs in that particular game, we plug the songs that we're thinking about in for several weeks while the developers are building it. And if it starts bothering them after a short period of time, then that song doesn't make the cut. We want those songs that will have that longevity of being able to sit and play through over and over without getting too repetitious where you get sick of it. As far as vocals versus instrumentals, I would say we probably end up using a lot more vocals than we do instrumentals. You might have the occasional short cut down trailer that only has room for an instrumental. I think when we are using music in game, we want the real deal that has the vocals on it.
Okay, yeah, because I've just got another question as well on that about instrumentals from Nathaniel Allen, who's asking, are instrumentals better to use? So I think you just answered that, right?
That's from the needs that I've experienced. Other people might have different needs. I think I opened the answer up with saying that it's gonna, just like everything else, it's gonna vary project by project.
Okay. Well, there's some really kind of complex ones here, and I want to try to dig into a couple of these. So let me see, JT Leon here, music artist and digital marketer. In response to the influence content work around, is it not possible to utilize Instagram elements like music stickers, which are licensed, etc., so content in stories don't get flagged?
I don't know what he means by that. I don't know what that means. What I do know is that if we package up gameplay, for instance, Tony Hawk being the example, that gameplay that we pass over to that content, that influencer for content creation, and that has music in it, that's licensed music, that's owned copyrighted music, that gets auto flagged on at least your YouTubes and your Twitches. And it gets auto flagged. It's typically when that influencer monetizes, right? What happens is that influencer monetizes. That's the reason it gets copyright flagged. That influencer's trying to make money off what he's doing. And then that raises the red flag that he has copyrighted material in his post. And at that point, he either gets a takedown notice or whatever. Probably has to just remove it, or it's blocked, or whatever it is. And that therein lies the issue, right? If it wasn't auto flagged, it would be just less of a, it wouldn't be a problem. It's just a workaround that we just don't know how to get around just yet. Put a lot of thought into it. I just haven't gotten there yet. Gavin's workaround is great. Have your own record label with thousands of songs to choose from, and pick your music directly out of your own basket. That's perfect. We don't have that basket of music, unfortunately. We have our game score and stuff like that. We do that sometimes. It's just scenarios like this change the sort of landscape and setting of what we're trying to do.
So there's your answer, Brandon. You don't need to sleep, just start your own label. Yeah?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, and on Instagram specifically and Facebook, it's similar to YouTube. There's some tech requirements there, but it's ultimately up to the rights holder. So that controls their content management system on the platform. So they can individually whitelist creators if the developer has a deal with them or the publisher has a deal with them. But generally on Facebook and Instagram, things automatically get taken down no matter what. So it just depends on if there is some deal in place to not have the music be flagged, or if you have like maybe top creators, or you're a creator that you can independently whitelist for use. So there's a lot of
we've gone down that same path of whitelisting people in the past. It can get very complicated because your major labels don't want to do that at all, because what it does is it allows that creator to have access to anything in their catalog now, because they're whitelisted from a company standpoint.
Right.
So it scares people a little bit to start opening those doors. We have done it in extreme sort of necessary workarounds, but it's also one of those, it's just a nuisance, seemingly waste of time to have to try and do that for every single piece of content that you're trying to create, in addition to doing the rest of your work that comes in on a daily basis. So in my mind, I just want to figure out some sort of eventual solve. The current solve I had in this particular situation was, let's license something independent or library-ish and get our influencer list and whitelist it. So exactly as you just said, we haven't figured out if we're going to do that or not. That's probably where we'll end up for this one anyway.
That might be a whole other panel, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. It's a black hole in itself. That's for sure.
Oh, wow. That sounds exciting. We've got time for a couple more. So this one is from Chuck Tenen, publisher, producer, Big Fish Music. Why are gamers, and I think we've touched on this a little bit, why are gamers and music supervisors so reluctant to accept or review new songs and music for consideration from an outside reputable alternative resource for their upcoming projects? And it could be that time deficiency, perhaps, is what I was referring to.
Yeah, it's exactly that for me anyway. I'm certainly not reluctant. You know, the reason I even have this job or got into this line of work is because of my love and passion for music, and my favorite hobby growing up was digging deep through the crates in the record stores, right? So it's certainly not because I don't want to. It's simply because there's too much to do during the course of a day to be able to stop and go through the amount of things that hit my inbox, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same for you?
We're trying to create that environment. I always mention Rocket League. Shout out to Michael, the audio director there, helping drive this. We're trying to create that environment where new music can be discovered, whether it be any sort of size of artists. Where in Rocket League, we're releasing music the same time in Rocket League as we are on the label now, so that the music's releasing at the same exact time as the launch track for the game. So when you're turning on the game, you're hearing that new record. I think a good example is a track like From Here by Cloud None. Relatively new artist. We dropped that track in game. The track has gotten a couple million plays in the past year through Rocket League. We have a lot of other hits that have done similar stuff. But we are trying to develop this environment where new artists or new records, depending on the size of the artist or any size of the artist, can be discovered through the games, to where we're starting to think of video games as, now that they're live and all the time, as distribution platforms like a Spotify. So that we treat it similar as a distribution channel. So yeah, it's definitely something that not only us, but other people are working towards as well.
Yeah, it's good to hear. From Maria Dicara, as in TV and film, are there also music supervisors specifically for music for gaming? Anyone want to take a look at that one?
Yeah, there definitely is. That's been my role at Activision since, as the intro pointed out, 17 years now. EA has had a department similar to mine for about a year longer than ours. You know, and it's a small community of people, but there's a handful at EA. There's a few at Sony PlayStation, a few at Microsoft. Riot has a department. I assume probably plenty more. The Rockstar has a team. Yeah, I mean, I think if you sort of start digging around into the different publishers, you'll find the right people to get to. I think a lot more game publishers now have them than, say, when I got into this 20 years ago, 18 years ago, 17 years ago.
Yeah, they play a key role, do they, in so many areas. I'm assuming, Gavin, you don't have anything to add there. I'll move to the next question.
Yeah, we're good to move to the next one. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. So Will Jones is asking, from all of your perspectives, are game developers wanting to make sure the artist has a following, or are they more concerned if the music fits the project? Gavin?
It depends on the developer, that's for sure, or the publisher. They all have very specific needs. Again, it could be a matter of, I'm just looking for a specific record that fits this need, or my vision for the game is for the discovery of new acts that don't get much attention, or they think they deserve more attention. It's definitely dependent on what the specific developer or publisher's needs and goals are for that. Because a lot of developers, maybe they don't want the track to be as forward facing, or for the artist to be as forward facing. They just need I just need this, like this sound. Or it's the other way, where it's like, I want this to be brand forward. I want this to be artist centric. Like I want them to also be discovered outside the game through like a Spotify link in game or something like that. It's totally dependent on what game you're aligning with, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Brandon?
Yeah, so I touched on this a little bit earlier, but you know, for Call of Duty, we certainly have taken the stance in so many cases that we want to find a stature artist that really sort of complements the size of that brand, right? However, on the current game I'm working on that, I've plugged in a lot of real obscure acts. And that's the first time I've actually done that with that franchise. So I won't say it's always the same way. And then I think everything else, it's just you know, the common answer I think is in project to project. Some groups are gonna want that name association and someone with a bit of a following, and others are going to be willing to just use the sound that fits and works, and that's not going to be an issue. So day to day, depends on the day.
Sure. Gosh, for all of us. Jose Antonio Acosta, thanks a lot for your insight. Are there any internet portals specific to the world of game music where we composers can submit music? Thank you once more. So we've mentioned Label Radar for Monster Cat. Do you guys know of anything else out there?
Unfortunately, I don't. Yeah, it would be an interesting play, other than what you guys are up to, Gavin. But I don't have anything to add on that.
Yeah, I don't really have many other platforms. I mean, there's lots of libraries out there, Songtradr, things like that, where like it's targeted towards gaming as well. Yeah, I can't think of too many on the top of my head.
Yeah, so perhaps we can just recommend to do research, to see the kinds of genres perhaps that different platforms specialize in, and if it looks like there's a really good gaming catalog on there, perhaps you can focus your efforts there. That might be one way. I think we have time for one more. Let me see. I was actually going to ask both of you, if you could be a character in a game, what would that be? But I won't put you on the spot for that one. Let me see.
I'd be Pitfall Harry.
What was that?
Pitfall Harry. Pitfall was that's about when I stopped playing games. No, I'm just joking. Pitfall was the Atari game back in the early 80s or whatever.
Make me Storm Spirit and Dota 2.
Oh, you guys are so cool.
Top of my head.
Yeah, well, it's an unfair question, isn't it? Because like they could be so loaded. I was thinking, I'm such a dag here. It's an Australian thing to say you're a dag, but Gardenscapes, there's this little dog that runs around the beautiful garden all day. That's all he does.
Yeah.
I'll just be him. So last question is from an anonymous attendee. What are some key metadata tags for gaming music traction?
I don't know. Gavin, do you have any answer to that?
It's a good question. Metadata tags.
Yeah, it's a good question because that really drives and refines search, doesn't it? And so I guess you do the obvious ones, gaming, game.
Yeah, I mean, it can be vocal, easy listening, like instrumentals help. It's definitely a case by case depending on the need. Like for esports, like when a broadcaster in a mission or it's someone speaking, they tend to go towards instrumentals. Things that I would say to avoid, maybe is a better way of putting it, is like don't have it be too jarring. Don't be too heavy. maybe also for the actual music composition itself, maybe don't, if it's like you're going for an easy listening experience, don't randomly have like a dubstep drop in the middle of it. That's too jarring as well. Yeah, I wish I had better.
Oh, I think you just unplugged your mic or something. Oh, there you
Can you
are.
hear me?
You're back.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry about that. That was weird.
No, I agree. And for tags too, one thing that we suggest is don't just flood it with 1,000 tags. You know, try to be very accurate as to what you're trying to categorize your music as, and that will probably guide people to you a lot better. So some really great points from both of you. Thank you so much. We have come to the end of our session, sadly. Brandon and Gavin, thank you so much for your time today. It really has been an awesome pleasure. You both have so many pearls of wisdom for us, and I hope that everyone out there feels the same way. You sound like you have the best jobs ever. So congratulations to both of you on your successes, past, present and future, and next time we might even be able to organise a Beat Saber battle. We'll see about that.
Do it. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me. Great to see you both. You guys have a good one.
Thank you.
You too, guys.
And thanks to our audience. Just one last message. We'll have the full session on YouTube tomorrow, so just look out for the link in the webinar follow-up email and the post on our social channels. The next session will be discussing ways to connect with your audience virtually, so look out for details. Stay safe and be kind to each other. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.